Hi, this is Greg the Hammer Valentine, WWE Hall of Famer. You gotta stay tuned because I'm ready to do a great big interview about my entire career, which is 40 years plus. I'm still going today on Hannibal TV. So stay tuned. No holds barred interview with Greg the Hammer Valentine.
This is Hannibal from thehannibaltv.com, and I'm with WWE Hall of Famer Greg the Hammer Valentine here in his new hometown of Las Vegas, Nevada. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm great. Thank you. I'm a little hoarse here. That's just my deep voice. I'm fantastic. I love being out here too.
Yeah, the weather is pretty nice. I guess you don't have to worry about the tropical storms that you'd have to worry about in Tampa.
All I have to worry about is moisturizing. It dries you up, dries your skin up out here. But you know, it was a real good choice for me. I've been here a year and a half, and after 33 years in Florida, it was time for a change.
So to start this off, what was it like growing up in a wrestling family with Johnny Valentine as your father?
It was like, actually it was a pretty normal life, but he was gone all the time, so.
And Knobs was telling us that he was quite a ribber. Did he ever play any ribs on you as a kid?
Matter of fact, he did, you know. He didn't do it till I flew down in the summer of '69. That sounds like a song. Yeah, or maybe it was the summer of '70. You know, I think it was '69 though. And I went on the road with him for 3 months. He was a Texas heavyweight champion. Got curtailed as Dallas Monday, Fort Worth Tuesday, or maybe it was Fort Worth Monday, Dallas Tuesday, San Antonio or Austin on Wednesday. Thursday he went to Corpus Christi or a spot show. Friday was a big show in Houston with Paul Blash. Saturday was either off or there was some kind of spot show. Sundays he had off. And that was a great experience. He lived in downtown Dallas in a place called the Manor House. You never even had to leave. It had his own grocery store. It was a high-end condo, and he was up on the 50th or whatever floor. It was a lot of fun.
And everyone says he was one of the toughest wrestlers and one of the most believable wrestlers. Why was that, in your opinion?
You watched it, if you could watch it. I mean, he didn't worry about the crowds saying boring or anything like that. He was intense. He had this intense look to his face, and he just projected it that way. And when he hooked up with somebody, it was like, ooh, you know, you could feel the arena rumble. I mean, it's just the way he did everything. Everything was thought out. Some people might say it was slow. Actually, the right word is methodical. And he did the whole match that way. And then when it was time for the baby face, most of the time he was a heel to make a comeback. Then the action would start, you know, and then he'd cut him back off. And he was so believable that, you know, I remember watching matches and I'd be down at ringside. I was just a 19-year-old kid or 18, and you know, just everything was just so solid. The matches before that, you know, I could tell there was a big difference.
When did he actually smarten you up to the business? Because he doesn't seem like a guy that would have told you at a young age.
Yeah, you know, he was very disappointed because a couple of guys, I can't even remember their names, underneath guys, and they showed me how to go up for a slam, and they showed me a couple other things, and I'm thinking, oh, these guys, and explained to me why their matches look so set up, or like they had a routine, and so it kind of gave me when I told my dad, someone showed me how to go up for a slam. He goes, "What?" And he's driving the car. "They told you what?" And it was like he wanted to hit me, you know. He hit me a couple times, and you know.
And I guess his favorites were the laxative ribs.
He loved his ribs always had something to do with poo-poo, or I could say shit, I guess. S-H-I-T. A lot of those ribs were done with that, and some of them were, you know, he was notorious, and everybody knows about these ribs. And he would make little deposits in guys' bags. Not necessarily he would hate them or anything, but it was just like the new guys that were coming around. He would literally shit in their bag, or he would have a styrofoam cup like this, and he would somehow curl it like a Dairy Queen and set it behind them in their little locker space. He was, it's like, what? You know, you never heard of this kind of stuff, you know, and he had a very good sense of humor. I remember, you know, back in the old days that Dad would carry honey around with him. A lot of the other wrestlers did too, for energy.
Yeah.
As you know, other than they'd take a little swig of whiskey too. No pills or anything back then, you know, and one time he had this referee, it was in San Antonio. He had this referee, and he had a bunch of honey in his hand, and he hit him in the ass when the guy went out to wrestle, or referee a match between a bear and somebody else. But the bear had a muzzle on him, you know. So he hit him with the honey. He knows he's refereeing this match against a bear and a wrestler. They had those back then, you know. Man versus bear, wrestling bear. So as soon as he got in the ring, the bear smelled the honey, and he took him down, and he was licking his ass. And the referee finally got away from him, you know. That was a kind, but you know, he had the muzzle on, but he still got him down.
Yeah.
And the fans were going nuts. It probably helped the match.
Yeah. So when you were initially trained for pro wrestling, who was it that actually trained you?
Stu Hart. Stu Hart was the first one that really smartened me up. In the dungeons, the famous dungeon, all it was really was a basement in his big house. He had a big 3-bedroom house, and it was in the basement.
What were your initial impressions of Stu? Because we've all heard the story that he was impressed with your arms when he met you for the first time. Yeah,
he picked me up at the airport, and he didn't have a driver, but he had a big, long Fleetwood, like a limo, Fleetwood. And I was getting my bag, and he goes, "You have big arms," and he was feeling my arms, and he talked like this. Stu's a great guy. Yeah.
What happened with his cats every time the phone rang? Somebody told me to ask you that.
Actually, I'm going to use this on my comedy routine, but it'll be funny to hear me do it live, I'm sure. But Stu had a way of talking. You know, you'd call him, you know, and a promoter would call him, or a wrestler to get booked, and he would be on the phone for an hour. He loved to talk. And it took a while for him to between the to get the words out. You want to come September, or you know, it was always like that. So it took forever. But he had a pencil, and he'd always had that pencil there, and he'd use that like a magic wand or something. You know how just something to diddle with him on the phone all the time. The cat would come up there and circle around him, and he would play with the cat's ass or his balls with the eraser part of the pencil. So this went on forever. So finally, he get out the phone, he'd throw the pencil down, the cat would leave, he would leave. As soon as the phone rang again, the cat would be there, take off, zoom, he'd be right there by the telephone, waiting for Stu and the pencil thing.
Wow.
So the cat was queer for having the eraser on his balls and his he beat Stu to this went on forever, you know.
And you teamed with Flair a lot earlier in your career. What are some of your memories of him?
Crazy, great guy, great talent, just crazy. It was perfect, you know, because I was laid back. It was perfect. It was a perfect combination, and it was good for me to be around someone like that. And I actually, I idolized Rick on his interviews, you know, and so I tried to keep my timing with his, you know, and he was great performer. He doesn't wrestle anymore, but he probably still could, you know. Rick was a great partner.
What was it like going out with him? Because he was quite the party animal, I understand.
Yeah, he was nuts, you know. We'd share a room sometime, and he'd most of the time we didn't, though, because he was too wild for me. He would get there, we'd be on the 7th floor in the Hilton, he'd throw a mattress out the window or something, and just crazy stuff like that.
Do you think the 10,000 women is accurate, or because I'm sure he's been with a lot of women, but that's the number he's thrown out there?
Wow, you know, yeah, it could be accurate. He's been married, I don't know how many times.
Enough that he still has to work.
Yeah. He's just a phenomenal. He's nuts, you know. But he loves this business. Probably the greatest worker of all time, except for my dad. But I mean, Rick is different. But you know, I wouldn't be surprised 10,000 women visited him.
And speaking of that, I know you've been married 22 years, but you were single a lot of your career. I understand back when you were breaking in, there was a lot more groupies than there are overall today in the wrestling industry.
Yeah, there was and they were good looking, you know, they're good looking girls. And women are attracted to you if you're an athlete, plus they're attracted to, you know, if you're on a stage of any kind, like a rock and roll, just stage or movies, or they're pro wrestling, they're attracted to that, and they should be, you know, because we're real men, and but it seems like so one-sided that the men are the ones that are supposed to be all the horny ones and want to be, you know, with some girl, and it's really not that way. It's especially if you're a celebrity, you know. I used to think all these women wanted to be with me because I'm so handsome, debonair, but I shouldn't, you know, it's just that they like the celebrity part of it. I'd see ugly wrestlers with beautiful women, so there you go.
And I understand you were quite a ladies' man, because I was shocked to hear that even in the later years, Medusa went out with you for a period of time.
Yeah, I try to stay away from talking about that, you know. My wife, Julie, we've been together since 1995. We have a great relationship, great. That's when all the parties stopped, when I settled down.
And everyone...
Definitely those kind of parties, though.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you got more partying in your younger years than most people do in a lifetime. So.
I still like to get together with the guys and have a few drinks, smoke the weed. You know, that's about all I do anymore, and try to stay out of bars. You know, it's definitely.
Well, speaking of weed, it's legal in Canada now, and it's also legal in Vegas. Do you think it's going to become more accepted overall in the U.S. pretty soon, or is this going to be a long battle?
I doubt if they ever legalize it in Florida. and New York, but maybe New York more. I can't believe Massachusetts it's legal. You know, it's just like, and all of Canada, that's great, and Nevada, California, Oregon, Washington out here, Colorado, of course, Alaska.
Vermont.
Vermont just went that way, yeah. I know a lot of guys. Back in the days, I used to buy my weed from Vermont. A guy happened to be a lawyer turned me on to the guy, and he sent us great stuff. Vermont's got that good soil.
Speaking of which, I do have some mango weed candies I bought last night if you want one. Just remind me at the end. And back to wrestling, of course, your famous dog collar match with Roddy Piper. What are your memories of that and the build up to that feud in one of the matches that people still talk about today?
Yeah, actually I battled Roddy. I was the U.S. champ, and I battled Roddy for a long time up to that. And, you know, Roddy was a great babyface, but in my opinion, better heel. But he was really good at both. But we wrestled each other a long, long time, and he told me about this thing he wanted to do with this dog collar, and he presented it to Jimmy Crockett and George Scott, I believe, or Ole, whoever was the booker back then, but mainly Jimmy Crockett. They went for it, and it started out. It was on my birthday, and I was doing a TV tape, and I had this big cake, and I went to cut it, and pulled out this dog collar on television and build it up for the dog collar match. And we did that. We talked about the dog collar match about 10 minutes before we went out to do it. And that's why it looks so real. Because we didn't sit there and talk about what we were going to do. We just ad-libbed it. And that's, you know, we had an ending, but the ending was kind of, but at the end, Roddy was going to get his Duke raised. It was a U.S. title match, but it was non-title. And we just made it a real gruesome match. And Piper had some little tricks that he told me that we could do with it by stretching the thing out, and, you know, on the chain, and because he brought that dog collar from Oregon. And so we said, let's go do it. Let's steal the show. Let's knock it out. This is for the people, because we got paid pretty good, but not nearly as much as we should have, you know. Should have been $100,000 or $1 million.
Yeah, that was the very first Starrcade, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was actually the very first pay-per-view for wrestling, but it didn't go into the cable at your home. You had to. It was closed circuited, like they did boxing back years ago, and you could go see it in a theater or bar or something. I think of sports bars had it, you know.
And I know you were around Dick Slater a lot in those years. Do you have any stories about how tough he was? Because you always hear he was a guy you wouldn't want to mess with.
He just had those big. He didn't even work out that much. He was just a raw-boned guy that knew how to punch. He could punch your lights out, you know, and yeah, Dick was another real good friend of mine. He passed away, and they actually did something where they operated on his back. They did the same thing to Hogan too. They operated on the wrong side of his back. They screwed him up even worse. This is in Florida, so you want to get operated on, go somewhere else, like Rochester, Minnesota or something, or Cleveland. They have great hospitals there. But yeah, they messed him up, and he was like on a walker or a thing that you drive around for a long, long time after that. And then you take all these Oxycontins and stuff, and that messes you all up. So he really had a rough life after the wrestling part, but he was a great wrestler, tough guy.
And speaking of wrestlers that have had a rough life after the wrestling part, Billy Graham's not doing too well these days. His mobility's bad, and he has a heart condition. Do you have any memories of working with Billy Graham or being around him? I guess you were probably both heels.
in Calgary, he was breaking in when I was breaking in.
Oh, so you were there from the start.
Yeah, Wayne Coleman. And big arms, and he was really, he impressed me. He learned, same time I learned, you know, and Billy turned out to be a good worker, but he was more the razzmatazz, interviews. I mean, he didn't go out there and go an hour broadly like I would or Ric Flair, but you know, he did what he had to do, and he really got over it, and especially in New York.
And somebody told me to ask you about getting in a fight during the 79's trap match with Chief Jay Strongbow.
Yeah. And this guy sued me, by the way, and it was on video, and the WWE's lawyer was taking care of it for me. He calls me up, he goes, you know, he says, this is bad, it's on video, Coliseum video, out on VHS. And you can see the guy, he reaches over to grab, I was grabbing a chair and he's fighting with me, the chair, and I pulled the chair with him and popped him, and he wobbled, so I hit him again and tried to knock him down. And it was all on video, so he's suing me, and then I guess he didn't have, you know, he was a loner or something. He ended up dying, and I remember the lawyer called me, he goes, well, the case is off, he died anyway. And then a woman in Norfolk Scope or Hampton Roads Coliseum, I was wrestling Wahoo, and we were chopping the shit out of each other, going back and forth. And once again, I went to grab a chair, and apparently I tore this woman's arm when I grabbed the chair. And she sued me too, but she died too. So that's a warning, you try to sue me, you're gonna die. Everybody died.
And of course, you had a lot of championship matches against Bob Backlund that were pretty good back when he was world champion. Any memories of those, and what kind of a personality he is?
He's a great guy and another good friend. And I remember when I first went to New York, and they built me up about 4 months on the TV before I ever went to the Garden, and I did figure fours on everybody, and they would carry him out, everyone, on a stretcher. So it's very believable back those days. And so I'm thinking it's going to be everybody's got short matches in New York. I watched them, and they pulled hair, and they did everything. It wasn't believable. I said, it's going to be a cakewalk for me. I was just going to grab a hold, because I'd never seen anybody wrestle before, and you know, it'd be something new. I used to talk to my dad after he had the plane crash, and he'd always be saying, yeah, you grab a hold and wrestle. They'd never seen that before. You know, you'll be able to do a lot. So I'm thinking short matches, and they come up to me and they go, it's the first night I've ever was in the Garden, and they go, we want you to do a straight through 60-minute match with Bob Backlund. And I heard Bob Backlund was really hard to work with. But you know what, after 10 minutes, he got winded a little bit, and so did I. And then I'm used to doing the long matches, and Bob was beautiful, and we had a lot of great matches after that. You just had to tire him out a little bit, you know, because he used to flop, but he was in tremendous shape. In a shoot match, I wouldn't have had a chance, you know.
Do you think he would have done well as a heel if they had turned him earlier during Hogan's run as champion? Because he seemed to do well in the 90s as a heel, but he was past his prime by that point.
Yeah, he could come off like running for president or something, some crazy guy, or he could do the Wall Street gimmick with like Mike Rotundo did with the IRS. You could do something like that, change his whole gimmick, have him wrestle with a suit on or something, or suspenders, and yeah, that would have been great for him.
And of course, you had that memorable feud with Tito Santana. Any memories of that?
Just fabulous matches. Tito was perfect. The angle was perfect where I figure forward him after I beat him, and he had to get an operation anyway, and it was just done so well and so believable. And you know, every match that I had with Tito was a classic, and we actually went out back in those days. The WWE, WWF, whatever, ran 2 to 3 shows a night. So Hogan would be on one, and Tito and myself would be on another one. So we didn't need Hogan to sell out; we'd sell out anyway.
Right. Yeah, because they had the A, B, and C shows in those
Right.
days. And you were on main events all the time, not only with Tito, but often on those B shows you would be against Randy Savage and others
Yeah.
in the main event.
Yeah.
What was it like in
Ricky
those?
Steamboat would be another one.
What was it like when wrestling hit hugely popular in those days? And I guess you would probably were recognized everywhere you went. You had an action figure.
Oh, it was great. You know, you felt like a movie star. It was great to be recognized. It was a great time. Everything was brand new. We're being broadcast all over the world, in Europe and every place, and it was a great time. Everything was innovative. Everything was brand new. Saturday night's main event was, you know, it pulled like 20 million people rating on NBC, and I was on that a bunch. It was great. It was a great time to finally being recognized like a real celebrity or a real sports figure, you know.
And I've heard some horror stories about wrestling the Junkyard Dog during the time he was in WWE in the 80s. Did you have good experiences in your matches with him, or did you have difficulty?
What takes a good worker is being able to work with a broomstick. That's what my dad, that's how he explained it. He says, you should be able, you're the heel, you're the guy, you're the champ, you should be able to have a match, literally, with a broomstick. So some of these guys could not work that well. So you just had to work around them. JYD would hear the crowd. He had 4 or 5 things he did, and I just made sure. He liked to do that dog thing where he'd run and give you a headbutt. I'm thinking that's so silly, but I'd have him knock me down, and I'd, just come up and he'd do it, and the people would pop. So you just have to work around everything and adapt yourself to every style. I can't go in there and work with Junkyard Dog like I would Ric Flair or Tito and chop him, and I'd still get a few chops in there, but he wouldn't like that, and I don't want him to beat me up because he really was a good, I don't know, wrestling, no, just big tough guy.
Did you have any say in being tag team partners with Brutus when they put you guys together as the Dream Team?
Well, George Scott was the booker then, and they wanted to do that, and I said, that's fantastic. And what makes a tag team work is to have a captain, which was me. Brutus was green, but he was still good, so it worked out perfect. And if we had a problem, the Bulldogs would pick on him sometime and stuff, but I'd tell the guys to knock it off. It ended up being a perfect combination. There's no other, the Dream Team, I actually, I thought of the Dream Team. I thought of that name. There might have been a NBA basketball or people that used the Dream Team, or O.J. Simpson Dream Team, but we were the first. And they actually went with that name, Dream Team. We actually had more fans a lot of places than the other good guys, so-called good guy tag teams, except for the British Bulldogs. It was a perfect match. God, we sold out Toronto and Montreal back to back. And we were the top. We weren't like semifinal. Once again, we were the main event tag team, British Bulldogs against the Dream Team, all over the country. We even wrestled Sheik and Volkov, and so it's like a heel match, but we were baby faces. Like in Anaheim and Seattle, a lot of the out here, a lot of the West Coast towns, they threw that in there. And it did great.
Your most famous match as the Dream Team was WrestleMania 2 against the Bulldogs with Ozzy Osbourne in their corner. What was that like, and did you get to meet Ozzy at all?
Yeah, And you know, I had met Ozzy before in Japan, and actually the two drummers that they ended up forming some group. Gee, I wish I could think of that. Night Ranger, I think so. They formed Night Ranger later on, but they invited me and Adrian Adonis. Speaking of Adrian, God bless him. We were down the bar at the Keel Plaza high-end hotel where we were staying. They invited us. We had a day off, and they invited us to come to the show. We sat on the stage with them, and it was fabulous, you know. And then I don't think he remembered. I said, "Remember Tokyo?" I don't think he remembered that, but Ozzy's, you know, he's a trip, man. I love that TV show he has with his kid.
I'm really impressed that he's still alive with all the drugs he's done over the years, but I'm happy he's alive. I'm a big fan.
Me too.
And you mentioned the Bulldogs messing with Beefcake a little bit. Did you notice the ribs that they were playing in the dressing room? Obviously, the most famous was the stuff that led to the Rougeau incident, but I heard they mess with Outback Jack a lot too.
Yeah, they. We could talk about this because both of these guys have passed away. So, and Outback Jack, I don't know where he is, but they halcyoned him, and that was a sleeping pill that you would put in someone's drink, and so he was knocked out. And he always wore that hat, so they took the hat off, tore it all off. Then they shaved his head, and this is all on an airplane, and people are looking at that. They put they didn't shave it all the way, just a big tract, you know, and he was like, and then they put super glue on the hat and put it back on his head. So he couldn't get it off. When he did, he tore his hair off. And I wasn't around, I just got away from that, and I got away from when he was getting his bags and stuff, but I heard he ripped the hat off, and it was a horrible scene. And Outback Jack, so ended up, Outback Jack shows up, and Jay Strongbow sitting back to the hotel. You can't wrestle like that. And you know who got fired? Outback Jack.
Well, I guess he was a dispensable one. I heard he was pretty hated overall, though, backstage by everybody. He thought he was a big star.
Yeah, he just didn't have the personality to fit in. Here you come in, all these WWF stars. There was about 15 of us, maybe more, but around that number that were being used real good, and we were like a family, and it was hard to break into it. And you could tell this guy was an ass jerk. He just couldn't acclimate himself to be one of the boys. You gotta be able to take a rib, but stick up for yourself. And it was hard. It was hard, you know.
And after you split up with Beefcake, you teamed with Dino Bravo for a while as a new Dream Team. Any thoughts on that and the terrible death that happened to him with his murder?
Yeah, I wish I would have given Dino more of a chance. We wrestled together, and he just didn't have the timing that I was used to, and I couldn't control him. But you know, I didn't know it was all politics back then, and they wanted to put the belts back on the new Dreams. I didn't even know this, you know, and they had this stupid angle where we were going to steal the Bulldog, and we were going to come out with a collar with no dog on it and walk it around, you know. And I guess that would have been good, but back then I'm serious, Greg Valentine. I didn't want to go for it, and we actually put over the Killer Bees one time in Madison Square Garden, and I said, okay, you can take the fall on me. So I just had him, I was going for the figure four, and one of them jumped out the top rope. It was a good finish. I thought about myself, but at the same time, it really pissed me off, and so I quit. I got on the airplane the next day. I had like 14 bookings coming up. I got on the airplane the next day, and I just flew home. And the airplane was empty, and all of a sudden I see Hogan up in first class. So I'm trying to hide from him, you know. And I just wanted to be left alone. So I get home, and Vince calls me, and eventually I answered it. And I was on the phone for 4 or 5 hours with Vince. If I would have been smarter back then, I would have turned him down, but he talked, because I could have been one of the Four Horsemen. I had something else set up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Could you tell us that?
Well, I got a call from Jim Ross. I think J.J. Dillon was part of it too. They go, yeah, we're going to turn Barry Windham babyface, and you'll slide right in as one of the Four Horsemen. Had this all planned. Well, Vince heard about it through the grapevine. He heard I went to Dallas and had a meeting. I had a meeting with him actually before this incident in the garden where we put the Killer Bees over. And nothing to do, you know, I respect Brian Bear and Jim Brunzell, so had nothing to do with them. I didn't think it was good business. And I don't like doing jobs. So, you know, they talked me into coming back, and then he eventually got me. Vince finally got me, what else was it? You know, with the earthquake. The earthquake thing, I went around and beat Dino Bravo, but they were setting me up to do the big job for Earthquake at WrestleMania 7. And I remember Jay Strongbow came up to me and he says, they don't want this match to go over 5 minutes. And that pissed me off. I said, I ain't doing it. That's bullshit. 5 minutes with that big fat piece of shit. And I'm sorry, that's the way I felt about Earthquake. I'm gonna let that big blob beat me in 5 minutes. You know, I have respect for myself, let alone, you know, I guess, you know, I hate anytime I see that, and I look like a midget compared to him, but it was a mismatch, shouldn't have been done that way. You know, nothing against Vince, I like Vince now, but it really put me in a predicament. I didn't appreciate it.
And you would have been a huge star, like even bigger star than you ended up being if you had joined the Four Horsemen.
Yes, it would perfect. And Vince heard this. Somehow he heard, I mean, it's like the White House. There's the leakers, all these leakers that said, I went to Dallas and met with all of them before. You
were friends with them in real life too, so you would have fit in.
It would have been perfect. And Vince messed that up. Thank you very much, but you know, he's looking out for his company. At that time, my name was big, and I could have went and used it. Instead, I go back and got abused. But I went to WCW. They didn't even use me that well. But I found, and because the wrestlers and Bill Watts and all these guys were running it, and running the bookings, and they tried to take advantage of me, and they wanted me to do a job for Sting on television. I just packed my bags and left. You know, that's not the way I do business. I don't do jobs on television unless they were going to let me come back next week and do something big that would shoot me back up. So, but you know what? I found out about the independent market, and I was big on the independent market, and I went to Europe with the Ultimate Warrior. I mean, there was all kinds of independent stuff that was out there, and my star was big, and I kept it. And you know what? I think I overcame that Earthquake job, and Vince, kudos to Vince, he finally calls me and says, I want to put you in the Hall of Fame. So that was a thank you, Vince, and that shot me back up, shot Greg Valentine's star back up, and a lot of other guys. It was 10 of us that just really started the Hall of Fame again. It was WrestleMania 20. Jesse Ventura, Sergeant Slaughter, Bobby Heenan, Don Morocco, Tito Santana, Junkyard Dog, John Studd, and the ones that weren't alive and present at the time. They had Junkyard Dog had his daughter there, and then John Studd had his son there to take the awards. So it was a great boom for me. I'm not blowing my own horn, but this is everybody knows that they announced this on the stage in the garden, all 10 of us standing there. And when they mentioned my name, I got the loudest pop because New York was my town. New York, I had a lot of long friggin' matches with Backlund and Tito and Ronnie Garb, Hulk Hogan, a lot of history. New York was my town. I still go back to New York a lot. People still want to come and see me and get my autograph. New York was my town, still is.
And you mentioned Adrian.
Toronto was too.
Yeah, you were really popular all over Ontario, actually. But you mentioned Adrian Adonis earlier. Were you there for that infamous fight he had with Spivey?
No. I was sick. I was at home very few times. I called in sick. And I missed that. It was I think it was in Green Bay.
It was in Michigan. I think Flint, Michigan.
Okay. Yeah. So it wasn't a TV thing. No, it wasn't. Yeah, I heard about it. Oh my God. They tried to take, I guess, I don't know how it really started. It started in the ring, and Spivey got mad, and Adrian disrespected Spivey and said called him a jabroni or something, don't mess up. And then so when they got, I guess he nailed him a couple times in the ring, Spivey did. I don't know how the match turned out, but it got screwed up. So so Spivey went to Adrian and said, "What the hell are you doing?" And then, or Adrian, could have been vice versa, but Adrian, long story short, shot for his legs, and Spivey was there and just beat the living hell out of him. 2 days later, I showed up the Rosemont in Chicago, and I walked in, and here's Adrian. It looked like a friggin' alien movie. His head was this big around, and he showed up to wrestle Hogan, and they wouldn't let him. I mean, it was like, I'd never seen anybody beat up so bad in my life, and I've seen a lot of that. This is unbelievable. I mean, just, oh my God. He survived it, bro. Oh.
Did you get along with Adrian behind the scenes?
I did, until they turned him to this gay Adrian Adonis, and then a couple times I went up to talk to him, and I don't know, he said something real condescending to me, like, "Oh, now you want to talk to me all of a sudden." I go, "You know what? I don't ever talk to you again." You know what? Don't talk to me like that. He's all of a sudden, "You want to talk to me now." I don't remember. I was just going to say hi to him, because we haven't really talked since it's this whole thing. I mean, blew his ego apart, or shot his ego way up there, where he just wasn't friendly to any of the guys. So don't talk to me like that. I knew Adrian back in Buffalo before he ever got in the business. So
I heard that Pat Patterson in particular was a big supporter of yours. Did you guys know each other before the WWE days, or was he just a big fan of your style once he saw you in WWE?
Yeah, we just had a good relationship, and he lived in Florida. We went over, and my wife and I would visit him. We just had a good relationship all the years. I respected him, the way he worked. He was like a Ray Stevens was his partner, and I got to be Ray Stevens' partner as the World Tag Team Champions in NWA. They were just exactly alike. So I have a lot of respect. I love Pat Patterson.
What was that saying that Ray Stevens would say when he was drinking? Do you remember?
Help me out.
I don't know it, but I've just heard several people tell me that.
I wish I could remember, because we did a lot of trips together.
Something like, "I'm a fucker and a fighter and a wild bull rider."
That could be it, right? Because he rode bulls, and he was a rodeo guy too. The guy was a tremendous athlete, and you wouldn't, you know, he didn't work out in the gym all day. He just had all the tools. He's the first guy that showed me how to take like an arm drag type thing and just keep rolling with it so you roll right back up on your feet. Because I'd watch him do all these bumps, hip tosses, but he would just roll, instead of taking a bump and just laying there, he'd roll right back up on his feet again and take another one, roll, and then finally he'd lay down and sell it, you know. Where my dad would not take a lot of bumps, I eventually started doing my dad's thing because I didn't have the back that Ray Stevens did. I would throw my sacroiliac out and I couldn't move. So if I sold a bump, I'd do it like my dad, a big slam, and he'd go, you know, you sold it. Maybe only one or two slams, a guy pick you up, give you another slam, and Ray was a nice flow. It was good for tag team, but single matches I went to the slower style, selling.
And what was it like wrestling Hogan when he was at its peak and main events all over the place?
Oh, it was great. He didn't have to do nothing. You know, I put him over on everything, you know, and he'd let me chop him and everything. But when I'd eventually get him down, he would sell. And he didn't have to do anything. He'd just go like this, and people, he just get him down, hold him down, boom, 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 hold him down some more, and it was like picking grapes. It was just so, you had the people in the palm of your hand with him because he was over so much, and they fed him heels. Good thing about me was they would feed me to him, but I had the IC belt too. So I had something to fall back. But I could work, you know, I could take care of myself. Even if I did a job in the middle of the ring for Hogan, I'd do something where I'd beat myself too and come off the top rope and run into his leg or something, and boom. They didn't even have this program, but he would tell the referee, tell Greg to jump me and put the figure 4 on me. So I get my heat back. That didn't come from Vince or the office, that came from him. That's being a friend, you know, so.
So when did your friendship start with Hulk?
Oh, wow. Well, I guess when I first went to WWF, 84 or something, when they put the belt on him, and I had Bruce with me later on, and I think, you know, being he married Linda and moved not far from me, so he was a great host. He'd had a lot of guys just migrated to Florida. You know, I'd still consider him one of my best friends in the business. No ego, no nothing. The guy knew what he was. He's the biggest ever.
How's he doing these days? I'm sure you still keep in contact with him.
Yeah, he's doing great. And they're getting ready to do a movie about him. And I hear Bradley Cooper's going to be Vince McMahon. That's what I heard. They have called me. I'm going to do some meetings with the directors, producers, whatever, of this movie. They want to talk to me. So I think they're going to do a roundtable type thing. Because I was from that era that they're going to film about. So there's a lot of movies that are coming. The WWE is going to do a movie about Roddy Piper, so they contacted me about that too. So.
And you worked with Randy Savage a lot. What were those matches like, and what was he like behind the scenes?
In the earlier years, Randy was great, and I didn't see much of him. I mean, we were starting the XWF, and we wanted him to be part of it, but that didn't work out, so I brought Piper in instead. But in the earlier years, Randy was great. He'd come over to my house all the time. We'd smoke some weed together, and Elizabeth was good friends with Julie, and you know, he was great. But he got you know, when him and Elizabeth split, it was a whole different thing with him, and he kind of became, you know, a recluse. He'd pop out every once in a while, but It was hard to get to him.
I'm guessing you probably didn't see the Vice documentary that was recently done on Savage and Elizabeth.
No, I haven't seen that.
They also did one on Brody. Did you ever have much contact with Brody over there?
I met him one time in Chicago after the matches at a bar. And, well, I went to Puerto Rico after the thing happened where he was murdered. And, you know, it's just, our paths never really crossed one time. That's it.
And one of the shows that you wrestled Randy on was WrestleMania 4. And that was one of the Donald Trump WrestleManias. Did you ever meet Donald Trump at those WrestleManias?
Yeah. Right. Thanks for bringing that up. I sure did. I stayed away from him, you know. I'm thinking, he's a billionaire. He don't want to talk to me. He calls me over backstage. I think this was either 4 or 5. I can't remember which one. He calls me, he motions to me, and he goes, "Hey, I just want to tell you, you're one of the best wrestlers I've ever seen. I really enjoy watching you." And I shook his hand. I said, "Thank you very much." And then he met Julie and everything backstage too, and then he's very nice to her. So you have a beautiful wife, and so after that I became a Trump fan.
Yeah.
Before that I was jealous because he's a billionaire, you know. But I'm a Trump fan.
I guess you voted for him then.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I voted 3 times for him.
And you had a feud with Ronnie Garvin around the late 80s, early 90s. How was it to work with him?
There's another guy I love, like Tito. And there's another guy I could hit and then get hit harder back, but he didn't, you know, that style that we had and that angle that he had that we did. Some people call it a mid-card match, but we ended up becoming the main event in a lot of places. And Ronnie's, you know, that style, those matches, it all culminated to one of the Royal Rumbles or something where we had the I Quit match, and that ended up, you know, I get a lot of compliments, just like I do for the dog collar match. That, you know, the Ronnie Garvin I Quit match with the shin guards and everything, and a lot of people love that match, so that's another iconic match. Ronnie Garvin's a great guy.
When they told you about the Rhythm and Blues tag team shortly after that, were you for that tag team at the time?
Yeah, I was for it when I had my blonde hair. If finally, you know, I just, for a year or so, they wanted to do the black hair thing to shock the people, and Jimmy Hart finally talked me into doing it. But you know what, I look back at it now and I think, you know, at the time I've watched the business change, and I'm watching it got really gimmicky, and I'm trying to hold out as a hard-nosed wrestler and trying to make everything believable. And I still wanted to do that, but I said, you know what? This is a departure for me. I'll go out and be a showman. You want me to be a showman? I'll be it. So I end up putting a lot into rhythm blues. And I actually I look back at it and I laugh and I join and enjoy it. But they cut it off. And sorry they did, because I think we could have did very, very well as World Tag Team Champions, but they cut it off because of the signing with the Road Warriors, I believe. So.
And you were main eventing some shows. I remember at the Ottawa Civic Center, for instance, it was the Rhythm and Blues against the Hart Foundation.
Right.
Main event, so I guess the paydays were pretty good in those days.
Yeah, and we were actually going to take the belts off the Harts. That was, you know, but Vince went another way when he signed the Road Warriors. He always wanted the Road Warriors. And so he laid us off, but we still got paid. He didn't fire me. I went to Japan, and I just started being I go to Japan once a month, and they eventually brought me back to work against Dino Bravo and set me up for WrestleMania 7. But yeah, it's no big deal. Business is business.
Is it true that it was Jesse Ventura's idea to dye your hair black? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he told. I don't think that they were announcing, but I don't think he said that over the mic. It was, wouldn't it be great to see Valentine come out with black hair, and the people would be shocked. And you know what? It was a shock. And I guess it was a good idea to do that eventually. And, you know, so I went for it. Jimmy Hart actually talked me into it. So I went for it.
Were you friends with Jesse behind the scenes?
Yes. I liked the way he always talked about me. He always talked about my style. And so he always stuck up for the heels, but he really stuck up for me. So, you know, I'd listen to commentating back in the day. Gorilla Monsoon always talked good about me. He said it took 10 minutes to warm me up, which was true. And I listened to that stuff. Me and Gene Okerlund, oh my God. What an announcer and what a good friend he was too.
What did you think about them putting the Honky Tonk Man in the Hall of Fame finally this year?
I think it's great. I think you know what though? I'm thinking, when are they going to do it? You know, it's good that they did it in New York or Brooklyn or whatever. I think it was perfect, and for Beefcake, I think it was long overdue. You know, both those guys, my partners, and I thought it was great. I didn't get to see all the induction, but I saw parts of it.
Do you have any funny stories about Honky Tonk Man that the fans might want to hear? You were around him a lot.
Nah. I don't know. When we were together, we never went to the bars. We hung out at the Room together. I can't really think of any funny stories. I know that he was instrumental for himself, he was going to be instrumental in making sure he kept that IC belt longer than anybody. He manipulated and moved, and I respected Honky for doing that. They wanted to take the belt off of him, and he said, "No, I'm not doing it." You know, and I respect that, because usually I said, okay, I'd let that promoter have his wish most of the time.
And they released him before you left, is that correct? Shortly after that Rhythm and Blues run?
Yeah, because they put him in the booth with Vince, and something happened there that Honky didn't like it anymore, so he left. So I'm back with the blonde hair working against Dino, and yeah, but then we got together afterwards. I told him about the independent stuff and how much money he could make, and he jumped right on that bandwagon. So
yeah, I think you two are two of the guys that have made the most money on the indies.
Yeah. Wrestling
the most since the 90s up until today. So you were saying that after the Rhythm and Blues situation, Honky Tonk Man left and you went on to become a babyface. Was there ever any explanation why you became a babyface?
I remember I flew in from Puerto Rico to do the show, and that was the last time I ever saw Dino Bravo, by the way. And I'm wrestling Saba Simba, which is Tony Atlas, Saba Simba. And it was a very grueling match because he was trying to get his gimmick together. We potatoed each other, oh my God. In fact, Vince even came up to me after the match and said, "You guys okay?" And yeah, I'm fine, you know. So threw potatoes, Tony's a real tough guy, by the way, too. So, but we ended up where Jimmy threw me the guitar, and I went to hit Tony. Instead, I hit Jimmy Hart on the head, and so the people popped big time in the Garden, and I just was, you know, so I guess it was a face turn. I never actually got hold of Jimmy. He just ran, but they actually cheered for me, and they've been watching me being this mean, nasty guy from 1979. I believe this was 93 or 4, 92, yeah. So I could have been a strong face turn. But I ended up leaving not long after that.
So was that on a house show, or was that on like did they actually show that turn on TV? Because I don't.
Yeah, it was at Madison Square Garden.
Okay, I see.
So it was on the USA cable, or I mean, it got a lot of, and the live. They used to do a live feed to Madison Square Garden Network, MSG Network.
I see. So I guess you just didn't like how you were being used. They never really gave you a push as a face.
Right.
You were just kind of a generic wrestler at that point.
Right.
And that's why you decided to go to WCW. Who did you talk to about jumping?
Well, they already had that big offer for me with some really good money to be the Four Horsemen, but like I said, I backed out of that. So they still wanted me. The deal wasn't quite as sweet, but I did get a pretty good guarantee. And I went down there and was Terry Taylor's partner, and they made us a tag team champion. So I was in a tag team thing again. It never, I'd rather be singles, but tag team, as long as you got a decent partner, you can. I'm a good tag team guy too.
How did you get along with Terry Taylor? Because I don't know if it was just because he was an agent. A lot of people hold animosity towards him, I find.
You know why? Because he's always getting a job. I guess he's got a job at WWE. Or, I mean,
yeah,
why should he have a job? And I don't care. But I guess he's better. I don't know, better whatever. I don't know what he's better at than I am, but he's definitely not a better worker. But there's certain guys that they think would be good in the office. Apparently they don't think I'm good in the office, and I don't give a damn, so.
So who was it from the office that contacted you when you joined WCW? Was it Bill Watts at that time?
No. I can't remember. I think it was Dusty Rhodes.
Oh, Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah. He was a booker then.
You knew him from Florida, I guess?
Pardon me?
You knew him from Florida and WWE?
Oh, yeah. We always had a good relationship. I was kind of a baby face in Florida before I left to go to Carolinas the first time, and I was Dusty's partner. Yeah, I have a lot of good friendship, a lot of good memories about Dusty Rhodes.
Any stories about him that people might want to hear? Everyone loves Dusty Rhodes stories.
Oh, God. I know he stuck up for me a couple times because Dick Murdoch wanted to beat me up when they were the Outlaws, and maybe he could have beat me up, I don't know, but I was in an argument with him in the car. Can't remember but I was riding around with the Outlaws, which was Dick Murdoch and Dusty Rhodes, and Dusty stuck up for me. He said, "Leave the kid alone," so we've always been good friends, and he helped me set me up with the elbow thing. We filmed me breaking boards in the ring down at the Sportatorium in Florida to send out before I actually went to the Carolinas and got my big break there. So,
what was the heat with Murdoch all about? He was just picking on you?
Yeah, that's all. I ended up he just had that personality,
Yeah.
He called me a pot smoker, and I said, "Well, you're a friggin' drunk," and you
He also
drink too
took
much
speed,
beer.
right?
Huh?
He also took speed, from what I understand, didn't he?
Dick? Yeah. That could be very true. I know he definitely drank.
Yeah. Jim Ross said that the speed was his key to drinking and driving all those years without being in a major accident.
That could be it, yeah. You know what? Yeah.
And Andrew Anderson told me to ask you about how the Ultimate Warrior helped you overseas.
Oh. Well, actually, I'd never been a part of this, holding a promoter up for more money, and he wanted to do it in Vienna, Austria, and the place is sold out. I was working against Jake. I think Hercules was working with the Warrior. He says, I want more money. He goes, would you refuse to go on till you got more money? And I've never actually ever done a thing like this, but I said, you know what, I want more money. So we held them up, but the people weren't rioting yet because the preliminary matches were going on. And I think we held them up on time as far as going out, maybe 30 minutes longer than it should have been. And then I went out and worked with Jake, and then Warrior worked with Herc, but we held them out. I remember I don't remember who the promoter was, but he was like, huh, this is silly, this is ridiculous, I can't get you American money, this is Austria. And I can't get American. Pretty soon, like 15 minutes later, they came in with a bunch of Halliburton suitcases full of money. And I got my good share of money. And after that, me and Warrior were best friends.
And that was on an independent show?
Yeah.
So you guys didn't talk much prior to that when you were in WWE together, I guess?
My wife was good friends with his wife. Yeah, we did talk, but we never made trips together or anything like that. But we were friendly, I didn't have to work with him that much, and thank God, because my style was, but the matches that I did have with him, like I said, the key was to work around. It was the match, we had a Saturday night's main event match. It turned out real good.
Have you heard that his wife is now on the WWE creative team?
Yeah, I just heard that. I had no idea.
What do you think about that? You're not on the creative team yet. The Ultimate Warrior's wife is. Not that you would want to be, but it's strange.
You know what? I think, I think I should have a job for doing something, but, I don't, you don't want to give me, I could definitely help them out, at least making things more realistic, I think it's good to have, I'm a wrestling mind, it's, I'm in my late 60s now, so do the math, that's 40 years of wrestling knowledge here. You could definitely, if I'm at a meeting, you could definitely jerk something out of my head, or I could jerk something out of my head to help them out, and so I wouldn't beg them for a job, but I would love to do the creative thing, I would love to do that.
I guess you would probably consider doing that for AEW too if they offered you Cody Rhodes' company there that he's involved with.
Kudos to that. They're out here in Vegas for 3 or 4 days, and I'm doing autographs for them, and WWE doesn't bother me. They let me do what I want to do, and I appreciate that. And so they, I'm open for almost anything, because right now I'm freelance and I stay busy. I'm busy every other couple of weeks. I'm out on the road and I enjoy it. I still enjoy working. I enjoy meeting all my fans. I didn't realize I had so many fans, to be honest with you, till I moved out here to Las Vegas. Because in Florida, they're used to seeing wrestlers. They're not used to seeing wrestlers out here. I go anywhere and I'm attacked, but I go to Caesar's Palace a lot and gamble the sports book, sports gambling. And I take the wife there a lot, and there's a transition of different people coming in every week. And so every week they're seeing me, and it's good that I never turned down a selfie, and I enjoy it. And all my fans are very friendly to me, and they really enjoyed my style, and they enjoyed the 80s,
And you mentioned you left WCW the first time because you didn't want a job to Sting. Did that have anything to do with him personally? Because we've heard from a couple of people that in those younger days he had a bit of an attitude? Or was it just that you didn't think it was right?
But I didn't think it was right. I have nothing personally against. I don't know the guy, but he got a super push in WCW. And did he ever come to WWF? Did he?
I think he did a few matches just
Yeah.
to be brought in to do jobs on WrestleManias, I think, but he
Yeah.
got huge payoffs for that.
Yeah, yeah. They put him on a certain level that I don't quite understand, but I guess it's timing for everything. Well, I'm definitely not going to do no job for Sting unless I get big money or something where I get to attack him later on. I'm old school. That's where I made myself, so I'm not going to disgrace myself for a few extra dollars. I'm not going to do that.
And they brought you back to WWE in the Survivor Series '93 under a mask. Was that
Yeah.
just a one-off, or was that a new contract?
No, I did the Royal Rumble later on. No, they were just bringing me on for a good payday, so I did it. And I didn't like the mask thing, but who cares? It's about this a lot of times. And they didn't embarrass me any, so.
Did Terry Funk tell you why he no-showed that, even though he was supposed to be one of the nights? I guess he came and then maybe he didn't want to do the job or something, and he left shortly before the show.
Yeah, I wasn't even aware that he was one of the nights. I guess, who were the other ones? I can't remember.
The only reason I remember this name was it was an unusual name, a guy named Jeff Gaylord. I don't know who he is.
Yeah, he's a big, tall kid, yeah. But he was basically a jobber, but a good guy, big guy.
Yeah, and I think the third one was supposed to be Terry. I don't remember who they replaced him with.
I can't even remember this thing. I tried. That wasn't the high spot of my career. The main thing is they sent me a nice check, and then they brought me back in the Royal Rumble, and that felt good too. As Greg Valentine, not with a mask or anything.
And I guess you had a contract in WCW in later years too, didn't you?
Yeah, I had one. Actually, Hogan approached me and asked me. This was in '97, I believe. And he talked to Eric, and they brought me in for a while.
Yeah, according to the internet, they said you were off and on there from '96 to '98. I don't know if you were under a contract that whole time.
I was a contract, yeah.
They just rarely used you, I guess.
Yeah, actually, it was a blessing in disguise. I mean, they never hurt me. If I did a job, it was for a main guy, or I could set the job up the way I wanted to.
Yeah.
And Lex Luger and Randy and stuff like that, Savage. And then they brought me in and put me over on a bunch of matches too. So it was a good situation. I got a paycheck every 2 weeks. Plus, being they didn't use me that much, I started working independents. So I was working independents, plus I was on the big satellite TV, and so it worked out good for me, but they eventually let me go. But I had about a year and a half, I think, on it.
How was the atmosphere in the dressing room in those days?
There wasn't much of, and everybody was kind of like, they're on a contract, and I got along with everybody, but it was a little different. But I wasn't really on the road with them. I would show up and do a big show at Arena for them where they were televising it, and then did a couple of pay-per-views. But usually I was at where they would do the WCW Saturday Night, which they would tape at Universal Studios. So I kind of like the only time I would really see the other guys. So I wasn't actually on the road. So it was a good contract. I could do my own thing.
And they used you, unlike Lanny, who I think just sat out his whole WCW contract.
Yeah, that's good though. If you can get money pay you for sitting home. You know, I enjoyed it because I only had to go to Orlando once in a while and wrestle, and they kept me beating guys, and then I'd tip my hat and let Randy Savage go over. Lex Luger. The Lex Luger thing was good, where I pinned him and he snuck up behind me and put the backbreaker. I mean, it's stuff that when I know I have to do a job, I like to look like it could have went either way, and they let me do that. So,
how did you like wrestling in Japan over the years?
Enjoyed it. I love Japan, and I love it because I could work my stiff style, and believe me, they would attack you, and if you didn't hit them back hard, they would eat you up. So it was perfect style for me.
And you wrestled for Antonio Inoki mostly, I guess?
Yeah.
How did you find working for him?
He was great. A gentleman and a scholar, Inoki, and Fujinami, his protege, I worked with him a lot, and Sakaguchi, stiff, big giant guy, but had a great time in Japan. You had to work really hard, and I did 6 weeks a couple times, and I told them I couldn't really do 6 weeks anymore, and so they cut it down to 2 and 3 weeks. Then later on, I just went over for a week, so. But I like Japan. I love Japan.
Any favorite matches from your time over there?
The one with Inoki and especially some matches I have with Fujinami. He kind of had like a Ricky Steam. He had the American style down, so he was like working with a Ricky Steamboat, who was great. And so memorable matches with Inoki and Fujinami, both.
And I guess you had some experiences training with the Sheik earlier in your career? The original Sheik?
I stayed at his house for a couple months and went out on the road. He had a big ring in the back by his swimming pool, but I never actually got into the ring. I never really trained. What's a Sheik going to show me other than hook up and pull a pencil and stick it in my throat? So I was already, I was pretty much past the green. I was still a greenhorn, but I had I had suffered the preliminaries with Stu Hart, so I knew what basically to do in the ring, and I worked with guys like Bobo Brazil and Haystacks Calhoun and Flying Fred Curry, who I had great matches with. And that's where I hooked up with Don Fargo and met Don Fargo. And then, as far as, Detroit was great, Sheik was great. He gave me this horrible name called Babyface Nelson, and I couldn't wait to get rid of that. But I wasn't ready to use my dad's name, so then I became Johnny Fargo. We went to Buffalo. It was great being Don Fargo's partner, too. He really taught me a lot.
And you wrestled for the Insane Clown Posse in later years at their Gathering of the Juggalos events. Any memories of those crazy events?
Yeah, they were crazy events. I remember going, when they had the gathering out in Illinois, I believe it was Cave Rock, Illinois. And me and Tito had a cage match, and they wanted me to go over Tito this time, and but we did not go into the ring till 4 o'clock in the morning. This is crazy, and but it worked out good. We went like 6-7 minutes, and boom, boom, boom. I was out of there. Went to the airport, took a shower, flew home. But the clowns are great guys. Later on, I did a thing with them. The clown theater thing, and that happened. That was going on for 2 years. I was their bodyguard, and I enjoyed all that. They're super guys.
What was the biggest differences between working for NWA and WWF?
Well, I enjoyed my years of NWA. You said NWA, right?
Yeah.
You know, they were both great territories, but WWF was on a higher scale because you had all those big cities and stuff. And then when we popped and started, from 79 to 84, I went back and forth all the time. You could do that back then, you know. Vince he said, I'm going to use you for about a year and you can go back to Charlotte. Then I'd call him up, I'd go back to New York, I'd go back to Charlotte, then I'd go back to New York, then finally end up staying in New York. So that was the best territory for money. Money was good in Mid-Atlantic too, but you didn't have to work as hard in New York.
What was your favorite moment from your time in New York?
Favorite moment was, I guess WrestleMania 1, because I was the first one. A lot of great memories. I guess Hall of Fame, 2004. That's a great memory.
What was your favorite WrestleMania match that you had?
Well, I enjoyed the Bulldogs match, WrestleMania 2. But I think when we had the tournament, I believe that was WrestleMania 4.
Yeah.
Was that right? And I got to work with Steamboat and Savage. I think that was my favorite one.
Do you have any stories about Andre the Giant?
Fabulous stories. I first met Andre. This is 1975. I'm in the back of this big 747, and a woman comes up and says, there's a couple of guys that want you to come up front. This 747 was empty. I'm in the back, and first time ever going to Japan, and I went up to first class, went up the spiral staircase, and up there was Arnold Skolin and Andre the Giant. And I sat down with them, and they wanted to meet me. They heard I was on the plane, and of course they knew Johnny Valentine, and so I had a great time with those guys. They got me all. They were playing cribbage and drinking cognac, and I got all messed up and went through customs. But the main funny story I want to tell you was Andre and me. We used to go out late at night a lot and get food after it was over. The only thing that was, after the matches and everything were over, the only thing that was open in Tokyo, really it was easy, accessible to get to, was the Korean barbecue. So we would go there and drink the sake and cook our own food, and it was great food. So we were calling a cab, we need to get back, and all these cabs would not stop because here's Andre. Oh no, you can't get in there. So they kept running off. So I says, Andre, why don't you hide over by there and I'll flag a cab down, and then you can come out and we can get in and get out of there. And so he came around, this one guy, and he came around, and the guy goes, no, 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 no. He sees Andre, he says, no, 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 you can't get in my car. And he gets in and starts to drive off, and Andre goes over and grabs the bumpers of cars and lifts him up, and the wheels are spinning like this, and the cab driver gets out, takes off running, and me and Andre just stand there laughing and laughing. Finally, they got us one of the big taxis so we could get back to the. I remember Andre on the bullet train. He was way in the back and he's up against the wall, and I'm way in the front, and a whole row of Japanese people in between. No wrestlers, they were in the other car or something. He'd raise up in the back and he'd go boom, big old giant fart, literally a giant fart. And the Japanese people all turned around and looked in unison at the same time. I go, hey, guy. Then he'd do another one. Boom. Those are some funny stories.
And do you have any stories on Kurt Hennig?
Wow. That's really sad that he passed away. I remember, Kurt was just coming in like 82, and I'd work against him a lot, and he was a good worker then, and he'd do the favor and put me over. But I remember sharing a room with a guy, with Kurt, and he had one of the Japanese wrestlers there. What the heck was his name? God. He was Pak Song. Yeah, that was
Possibly.
it. They would stay up all night playing cards. and he would stay up all night playing cards, and then he'd sleep in the car and sleep in the dressing room. Kurt was a great guy.
Do you have a favorite Don Fargo story?
Let's see which one I can figure out of the archives. So Sam Mushnick and Pat O'Connor, Harley Race, they were in the office in St. Louis, and they brought Donnie Fargo and myself in for a show. We came in as the Fargo brothers, and at the Kiel Auditorium, St. Louis was big for wrestling. It still is, but that was the home of the NWA, so to speak. And so they invited us over to where they were eating at some bar, was a restaurant / bar. So Fargo goes, okay, you go in there first. He took off all of his clothes, and he just left his Beatle boots on. He was naked as Jaybird. He says, you go in first and stand at the bar, and I'll come in and order a case of beer to go with all the office people and all these fans or whatever, or just people that happened to be at the restaurant. So Fargo comes in through the door, stark-ass naked with Beatle boots on, walks up and orders a case of beer to go, and he's standing there smiling with a cigar in his mouth, and everybody's laughing, and he takes a case of beer, and we left. Oh, God.
Who is the toughest guy, in your opinion, of all the territories you wrestled in? The toughest wrestler? We already talked about Dick Slater would have been up there, but anyone else?
A lot of tough guys, but I guess Orndorff was a tough guy, literally. I'm trying to think of this.
A lot of people put Haku up there.
Oh yes, thank you for that. Oh yes, definitely. He chopped me one time. I thought my heart was going to stop. But yeah, I could be in a bar right next to Haku or down. In fact, this happened one place in New Jersey. They wouldn't come in and mess with me. They'd mess with the toughest guy there, Haku. I remember him just taking a guy down and pulling his eyeball out. He was a legitimate, tough guy, probably the toughest of all.
Were you there that night that the Rockers had their bar incident with Jimmy Jack Funk, before they were fired the first time?
No, I remember hearing about that. I'm not trying. I know Jimmy Jack Funk got into it with Haku, and he took him down and was going to take his eyeball out. That was in Dayton, Ohio, at a Holiday Inn. I don't know if that was the same incident or not.
Yeah, no, I think that was a separate incident, but
yeah.
And there's a lot of fans on here asking you, what's your tips on having such great hair?
Thank you. I have a wife that takes care of my hair, and a lot of conditioning, and hereditary too, I guess. So Johnny Valentine, my dad, never lost his hair. right up to the end. So,
Do you have any old school advice for young wrestlers out there?
yeah, get a job. No, make sure you have that job or that diploma in your back pocket. It's not as easy now. I don't think it's as easy unless you get in and get lucky and get a good contract. I don't think it's as easy. Well, it wasn't easy back in my day either, but just be careful. Don't think you're just gonna crack through the glass and be a star. It's very hard. There's a lot of competition now.
Who was your favorite opponent over the years?
Well, Tito Santana, Ronnie Garvin, Ric Flair. I put Tito first there. Hulk Hogan. I actually wrestled Brutus some, but all those guys were great opponents.
There's a fan on here asking if you could tell us something about Hogan that not many people would know. Well, he's just, I think he's an open book pretty much. He's a genuine person. I can't really think, like I said, I can't see that he had anything that he'd want to hide or anything that you wouldn't know about him. It is what it is with him, I think. What do you think about today's wrestling?
I try to watch it, and sometimes I see good matches. I don't like all the interviews in the ring. If I was, say, they gave me a chance to give my opinion on the matches, I would slow everything down. I would go back to wrestling. I'd re-educate the people. I think I could show them how to, it's less is more. I think hitting a guy 20 times is way too much. So it all comes down to slowing down. But I do still see good matches, so it's hard to judge. I think there's too much wrestling on television. Yeah.
What's your advice on being a heel? You were definitely one of the all-time great heels.
Now, my advice, and being an independent guy or whatever, for who's asking these questions, or if you're a WWE star coming up, I was a wrestling heel, so I wasn't a cowardly heel. So a wrestling heel, the way I would do it and the way I would tell them is just be like, I could tell you how to be like me. Be tough, be aggressive. The only time you start backing up or backing down from somebody is when you're starting to get the crap beat out of you. And then you can show a little cowardice there, but, put the brakes on and then take back over again. But I'm from that era where I kept that baby face down until I was ready. He made a comeback. I'd take him back down again, and never let that baby face control the match. You got to keep control of it.
Was Wahoo McDaniel one of your stiffest opponents?
Yeah. Yeah, I still got scars all over my chest from him. But I learned how to do, back then I didn't chop him back, but I learned how to do the chops from him, which I ended up adding to my style later on.
Any thoughts on Jimmy Snuka, who I know you worked with?
Yeah, he's a Talofa brother. He's a great guy, great star. I'm sorry to see him pass away. I really was.
You have any stories on Rick Rude, another guy that unfortunately passed away?
A lot of people would say Rick Rude was one of the strongest guys ever. And he was. some girl came up and talked to us at a bar one time, and he put his hand like this under her ass and picked her up like that with one hand like that in a bar somewhere. I remember this sticks out. How could you do that, really? I mean, he was an arm wrestling champion, a legitimate one, so.
Wow.
Yeah.
Memories of working Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Fabulous. This guy learned how to be a main eventer in about 2 or 3 years. He just learned it, and he came into Carolinas in tag teams with Jay Youngblood and the singles, and the matches I had with him was just, they were phenomenal.
Any thoughts about King Kong Bundy's death?
I was very shocked. I was doing a couple different, Fort Myers, I did a Comic-Con down there he was supposed to be at, and he didn't show up. I did another one in Kentucky not too long ago, and he missed that one. And the promoter said it was because of his feet, he couldn't walk or something. But I did see him in New York not too long after that, and that he missed those shows. And I walked up, how you doing? And he seemed okay there. And then 2 weeks later, he passed on. It really shocked me.
Who was your favorite commentator to commentate your matches over the years?
I actually liked Vince. I like Vince and Jesse's combination. I like Gorilla Monsoon, Bobby Heenan, of course, Mean Gene Okerlund. He did play-by-play. They were my favorites. You couldn't beat those 2 or 4 or 5.
What are your thoughts on Vince Russo?
I don't know him.
Do you still wrestle? You already told me this off camera, but the fans want to know if you still get in there.
Yeah, the last match I had was in Colorado Springs. That was last year. And I kind of got away from wrestling, but I still would like to get in there. And if I do, I would like to maybe set up a tour. That'd be my legitimate last matches. It could be 3 or 4 or 5 in a row. I could still go. I still work out. I could still wrestle. Trying to send it off that way, I might do that, yeah.
Did your father ever attend any of your WWE matches when he was still alive?
No, he didn't, because he was crippled. But I actually did some shows after I left WWE. I went in, Jim Crockett was trying to promote the Sportatorium. He had TV and everything. And so I went in there and worked with the surviving Von Erich, Kevin Von Erich, and a few other guys. So he would come down to the matches and see me.
What were your thoughts on the ankle bracelet gimmick they gave you for a while there?
That was actually Vince and myself at his office in Connecticut, we came up, Vince says, we need to give you a facelift, and he was right, by the way, we need to throw some spice, because you've been here a long time, and we came up with the shin guard together, and that was a great deal.
Did you ever get into a real legitimate fight with another wrestler?
There was this one guy in Mid-Atlantic, but I can't remember his name right now, but he's passed away now, but I mean, he got mad at me because I was too stiff, and he threw a couple shots at my face, and I got out. Ric Flair was my partner, and I says, Rick, let me have him. I tagged back in, and I went at it with a guy. But he was a pretty tough guy, but I can't remember what his name was. And I finally just front face locked him and choked him out a little bit. That's about it, Other guys, I would get mad in the ring sometimes, and and I'd throw a couple potatoes at him. It was no big deal.
And what are your thoughts on Billy Jack Haynes, who seems to have lost it over the last few years?
Well, you know, I never had any problems with him, and I saw him the other day, and I couldn't believe it. But I remember him beating up Iron Mike Sharp, but I wasn't there, but it was somewhere. And Iron Mike just used to throw these stiff overarm things to the chest, and Billy Jack Haynes followed him back to the dressing room. And I wasn't there once again, but I heard he just beat him up bad. And Iron Mike Sharp is the nicest guy in the world. I heard that, and that made me hate Billy Jack Haynes. Oh, he just beat him up. I wasn't even there, I just heard about it. But right after that, Billy Jack Haynes got fired anyway, so.
Any thoughts about Bruce Pritchard, who's now back working for WWE?
Yeah, there goes another guy that resurfaced. I guess he's got a good mind, you know. He seems all together up there, you know. He's good with television and everything, and his dad, they did the stuff in AWA years ago, and they brought him in. And he was good at Brother Love, you know, so, you know, hey, if you can get it, that's great for him, you know.
What did you think about the theme musics you were given? Did you have a particular favorite one?
My music?
Yes.
Jimmy Hart did the one with the hammer thing, and he played it for me. I said, that's good. It had no singing to it, but that was good. And then the other thing with the Honky Tonk Man, we had his song, so. But I liked it. Boom, boom. You hear the big sledgehammer and then music coming in, and that's good to come out to.
What do you think about heavyweight champion wrestlers being smaller nowadays than in the past? Like someone's asking about Kofi Kingston, I guess, is the current WWE champion. He's a smaller guy.
Is that the black fella?
Yes.
Yeah. You know, I don't know, what would his poundage be?
I believe, I don't know, but he's under 200 for sure.
Wow. Nothing against him or any of the lightweights. I believe the WWE or WWF has always made money with big guys. Now, say I'm a middle-sized guy. I'm 6 foot, 250, 260, and you could be 230 and 6 foot or whatever. I think that way, you know, being my weight, I could work with the big guys or the small guys. But I like to see them at least 200 pounds plus. I think heavyweights seem to draw the most money, you know, or guys that can work both ways. In my size, 250 or better, you know.
Any memories of Bobby Shane and Buddy Colt in the plane crash?
And Gary Hart was in that, right? Yeah. And what was the other guy? Adrian. No, not Adrian.
No, I know who you're talking about.
I'm trying to get this.
He's a Billy Graham lookalike, Austin Idol.
Austin Idol.
Yeah.
They were in it too. Yeah. And the thing crashed, and Buddy Colt was the pilot. He survived. The only one that didn't survive was Bobby Shane. Am I right,
Yeah.
Bobby Shane? He didn't get his seatbelt off, and he drowned. And I guess he couldn't swim. All the other, they were actually only in about 6 feet of water at that Tampa Bay thing, and so they got out. Gary Hart's leg was broken. It was bad, you know, but those guys survived.
Do you have any stories about Bruno Sammartino?
Nothing but good stories. He was always a nice guy to me. I remember wrestling him twice just before he hung up the tights, and he'd take me down and hold me down, hold me down. I couldn't do nothing in the Garden and the Boston Garden, but then I got my licks in, and my dad didn't get along with him, you know, because he was they just gave him the belt because he was Italian, and New York was all Italian. But Bruno drew a lot of money, and he was always nice to me. So good. I have good memories.
Did you spend any time working full-time in a Texas territory? Any of the Texas ones, like the Von Erichs, or?
I did a little bit in the Von Erichs, about 3 or 4 months, and I went to Atlanta. Right then, I didn't use my dad's name yet, so it was hard to keep me there. And I did Amarillo, Texas, with Donnie Fargo. Good memories from there, with Dory and Terry and their father. It was a great territory.
Do you have any stories on work in the Boston Garden?
Yeah. Well, you know what? We had this ramp to get to the ring. The fans were very violent there, and they would try to get to you. Blackjack Mulligan, in fact, got knifed coming out of the ring. So then they built that platform. So they really couldn't get to me, but very rude. But they were just really into it. A worse place might be Worcester, Mass. Or not Worcester, excuse me, Lowell, Mass. It was terrible there. You're in fear for your life. Worcester, Mass, Kim Patera was coming out, and he had this overhang balcony where you come out to the ring and someone threw a garbage can on his head.
Wow.
So, wow. They were Massachusetts people. I think, I love the area and everything, but I think the fans are real rowdy there, even for other sports. I think they're all mad because the weather sucks there so bad, and the traffic is so bad. It's a hard place to stay in a good mood, A lot of elements, but great sports teams. Red Sox and New England Patriots, my God.
Do you think you could have had a good feud with Ric Flair over who used the better figure four?
That would have been great. Yeah. That would have been good.
Any memories of Baltimore?
I remember losing the title there to Tito. Baltimore was a great wrestling town. I loved Baltimore. I liked going out afterwards to Little Italy and all the seafood restaurants. But I remember the cage match that I had with Tito there. It was a great town. Always enjoyed going to Baltimore.
Do you follow the current product at all on TV?
Just enough.
Just enough.
I DVR it and I run through it. I think it's good for me to know what's going on. It's still my business. So.
Is there any wrestlers today you like watching?
Well, I'm a big fan of Randy Orton, John Cena, The Undertaker. I saw The Undertaker the other night. It was great. I'll just close it there because I'm not really familiar with all the new guys they got.
Where can fans follow you online if they want to look you up?
Well, I just started a website. It's called gregthehammer.com. I still got to do some more stuff to update it. And I'm also on Instagram, but I have a guy handling that for me too. So I'm going to be doing some shout outs so you'll know about it. And I'm just barely dabbing into that social media thing.
Any memories of your matches with Dory Funk, who's getting an award this year at the Cauliflower Alley?
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he's here actually today.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He liked to front face lock you and lean on you all the time. That's where I actually learned how to lean on my opponent to tire him out, because that's what he would do. He'd lean on you and wear you down and put that front face lock on, and then he'd give you that European uppercut that he used to do. Yeah, he was a leaner. He'd wear you out.
Any stories on Lord Alfred Hayes in recent years? People have come out saying he was a bit of a ladies' man.
See, I didn't know that, but he was very articulate. I enjoyed his commentating, and I actually remember him wrestling in Amarillo too. And all the English wrestlers that came over here, they had a certain style, but they liked to work a lot of holds, and they were very believable. And so it was fun to watch him back in the day.
What was your biggest accomplishment in wrestling, in your opinion?
Going 1 hour with Bob Backlund. That's a good, no, a lot of good things. I'm kind of like Ric Flair, where I heard Ric Flair talk about all the hour-long Broadways he did. So I was a specialty guy with going long matches. Most of my matches were 45 minutes or more. Someone wanted me to go earlier in 30 minutes. It was tough for me because it took me 10 minutes to warm up, but I old school, once again, you get tired of hearing that, but I like to make my matches like a story and work that same story throughout so I could paint a picture and produce what I wanted and have that good pop at the end of it and go out with a good feeling in the dressing room. That was my best feeling, other than getting paid good money, was to know that I did a good job out there, and that made me feel good.
How did you like having Johnny V as your manager?
He was funny. That only happened with tag team, with the Dream Team, and then a little bit with the new Dream Team. He was funny, and I thought it was fine. He's a good guy. God bless him too.
How did you like the Grand Wizard?
My best buddy of all time, and the very first time I came into New York, and he was more than just a manager. He'd call me at home. He'd tell me to gossip. He watched my back, literally. So, and he'd tell me anything that, if the office would say something good about me, he'd tell me. They never really said anything. I never heard anything bad they would say about me, but it was good. You know, he had your back, and he wasn't just there because they put you. The office put him with me. He really, especially with me, he reached out, and I went down to Fort Lauderdale and visited him, and so, you know, it became a personal thing.
What were some of your best lifts in the gym when you were in your prime, because you were a pretty muscular guy at your peak?
Wow, I did a 410-pound bench press, and that's about as heavy as I could go. I never made 500. And then I tore my pecs a little bit too, so I quit doing heavy. But I did 410 bench press, and that was not with steroids. I did a little steroids, but I didn't like them. I didn't like the way they made me feel. Most of my, my size was inherited from the 6'3", 270-pound Johnny Valentine. So I got most of that from him.
What was the best piece of advice that he gave you over the years, Johnny Valentine?
Don't sell out for a high spot. Don't listen to the people. Don't run the ropes. Don't do goofy high spots. Go to the gym and work out with the gloves so you know how to punch and fight for real. Go learn some amateur stuff, because I never learned that. And just try to make it look like a shoot. I said, don't sell out for the pop. He says you grind them, and you're going to eventually get the people. Make them think. He gave me this thing inside me. He said, well, if they don't believe any other matches on this card tonight, they're going to believe my match. And so I kept that through my mind all the years. And I actually, when I would get, go through a long match, like 40 minutes, and I'm blown up and I'm thinking, what would Johnny Valentine do? And I had that inside me where it seemed like I would become my father. And I would look at some old matches and say, gee, I worked just like my father, except I speeded it up a little bit. And so that's it.
Who did you like best as a tag team partner? Was it Beefcake or one of the other partners you've had over the years?
I liked every one of them, from Honky and Flair and Baron Von Raschke and Ray Stevens. My favorite was Beefcake. Yeah.
And having Knobs as a brother-in-law, what's that like, as crazy as he is?
That's oh my God. I'm a laid-back kind of guy, and when my wife first met him before we were married, they were jumping off the roof of my house into my swimming pool, but you know what? They're both great guys, and Knobs is a great guy. They're just crazy, and for a long time I hated Knobs as being my brother-in-law. But now I like it, so I got to look at that face. But he's been a good friend all these years. So, and so is Jerry Sags too.
Is there any tag team match that stands out to you as your favorite tag team match you ever had?
I think we did a couple of them on Saturday night's main events. Beefcake and myself with Johnny B in the corner against the Bulldogs. The one where we slid over, where I beat one of the Bulldogs, that's a favorite one. And then the one we did in Cleveland Saturday night's main event, where it was really our last shot at getting our titles back. But that was one of my favorite matches too. They were, especially the first one, Saturday night's main event.
Do you have any memories of Eddie Graham from your Florida days?
Very articulate guy, very smart guy. He was the first one that would kind of pattern our matches out, because we're all still learning how to put in a match together. He would give us spots, we had to remember all these spots, but they would work out to the finish that you were building to. So he would take time to teach us how to tell a story when we got in the ring. He was a very smart guy. He was a very good worker and everything. But he'd piece our matches together, and it wasn't like, he was really showing us how to make a story, and you're working the arm, and the guy, babyface, gets away, you get his arm back. That style of work, keep going back to that same arm hold all the time. And when you're young and green, and you got that to rely on, and go, oh, where do I go from here? You grab the arm again, and you go back to that same thing, or the headlock that you're working. So it really helped. He really helped me out a lot.
What did you hear about his death, about the reason why that he ended up putting himself away?
Oh, God. No, that really shocked me, but, they try to say that the WWF was coming down there taking over Florida, which they were, but he still had Florida going himself. I heard it was a combination of things, but I heard it was a land deal gone bad, and I really, it's all speculatory, but I heard it was some kind of deal like that, separate from wrestling, that he took himself out. and I heard this horrible story, and I'll go ahead and share it, that he missed the first time. He just blew one side of his head out. Oh. And so he shot himself twice. Oh, that's horrible. Horrible. The Graham family, you know, one of his grandkids took himself out, and Mike Graham took himself out. So it's terrible, terrible scenarios there.
Were you ever friends with Gino Hernandez at all?
I didn't know him.
Okay.
He was in Houston. I didn't know him, but he died from a drug overdose, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. He was he had it down. I heard he was really over in Texas, and he was drawing money. And he had some kind of relationship with Paul Blanche, maybe?
Yeah, there was always talk he may have been a illegitimate son or something.
Something like that. Or he was dating his mother or something. There was something there,
Yeah.
but yeah, he really had a promising career, and he OD'd.
And I know you were pretty close with Jim Neidhart, who wrestled for my company, Great North Wrestling, a lot. Any thoughts on his passing? Any good stories about him to share as we close this off?
Well, he was a tremendous guy too, and he'd always go like this with his beard. And my wife Julie and I would have Ellie and him over a lot when we still lived in Florida, and we had some good times with him socially. I was really shocked that he passed away. I think he had a problem with pills, like a lot of guys have with pain pills, and the way he died, I guess it was a brain aneurysm or something. He just took a bump, and a lot of good stories. Of course I'm close to the family where I broke in with Brett, and a lot of tragedies with that family, and Owen Hart, and so Jim. Really shocked me to hear Jim pass away like that.
What did you think about the whole thing that happened at the induction with the fan running in and taking Brett down?
I heard about it, and I thought right away that it was set up, or that WWE set it up or something. Then I watched it, but I heard the reports that it wasn't. This guy was just a goof. But the way he came in and kind of gave him a schoolboy, you know, I'm glad that Brett didn't get hurt or anything by going, but I guess the guys put the boots to him, and that made me happy, you know. What a goofball.
And is there anything you want to say to the fans or anyone that's watched this to close this off today? You've done great stories.
Yeah, I'm being completely honest about my career, and I enjoyed all the years, and I'm still feel a big part of of the wrestling universe, because I've never had to get a job yet. How about that? A real job. But this is my job now. I'm a spokesman for me, Greg the Hammer Valentine, but I'm a spokesman for wrestling in general, and WWE and the WWE Universe, and I enjoy meeting you guys that were my fans, and you brought your kids up showing matches of me on Google or the WWE Network, and I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody saying that the 80s were the best, because they were, but you know, we didn't have much. Well, we had to follow the 60s and 70s, but we blossomed this. You had WrestleMania 35 is because we had WrestleMania 1. And I'm just glad to be here. God bless.